Okay, guys, this is English 101, Week 12, Part 2. So we're going to get started on Eric Fromm's disobedience as a psychological and moral problem. I'm going to say this a lot. Say it again right now. When you take paper 4, you're going to be asked your opinion on something. They'll have a question for you to answer. Whatever they ask you your opinion on, it's going to be somehow related to both Fromm and Roderick. Those two essays that they have to read. So in paper 4, you are going to need to quote both of them. Both of them. If you give me paper 4 and you only quoted one of them, it doesn't matter how well you did, you're probably getting like a D. So make sure, when I say quote, I mean quote, put it in your own words, give me an example, explain what they're talking about, connect them to your point. That's what I mean by quote. So you have to quote both Fromm and Roderick in paper 4 somewhere, somehow. You can do it by saying, I think this. I think Eric Fromm would agree with me. And then you can talk about Eric Fromm for a little while. Or you can say, I think this. I think Eric Fromm would disagree with me. Here's what he would say, and here's why he's wrong. So you just have to put them in your paper somewhere. You could agree, you could disagree, just as long as there's somewhere in your paper and you're connecting it to what you're writing about. Okay, cool. You see a little kitty? Look at this little kitty asleep in the backpack. That's cute as hell. Look at that little guy. Oh, look how cute he is. Okay. It's Madeline. I don't know. Okay, that's my new kitten. All right, so I don't know how to say this. This is really stupid, and I apologize to all of you for this. The technology has changed for a reason I find completely baffling. If you've seen all my old lectures, and I used to be able to push a button, and it would flip the camera and show you what we were reading together. I don't know how to explain what happened, but that technology does not appear to be available any longer. My phone does not do that. YouTube used to let you film videos in YouTube, and it would let you flip the camera while recording, and YouTube updated one day, and that feature went away. So I'm not going to be able to show you the text. I mean, I can try showing it to you like this, but as you'll notice, it's like backwards. So I can't flip the camera while reading. So what I've done is I have numbered the paragraphs. See, I put little numbers on the side here. 1, 2, 3 is backwards, 4. So I'm just going to refer to paragraph number. It's not a very long essay. I'm going to be reading a lot of it out loud. I don't think you're going to have trouble understanding it, but I do recommend that you number the paragraphs on your copy. And you're probably not printing it out, you're reading it online. But you're probably going to need to read along somehow while you're doing these lectures. I'm going to let you figure out how to do that. You have different techniques. Maybe you're watching the videos on a phone and you've got the essays up on a computer. Maybe you found a way to print them out. Maybe, I don't know what. There's different ways to do it. So I'll let you figure that out. In the meantime, I'm going to read the essays to you and then go over what they have to say. And that's what we're going to do. Another thing before we get started. There's a movie. It's an uncomfortable movie. It is an unpleasant movie. I've seen it called a horror movie, although I'm not sure I would call it a horror movie. It doesn't star anyone you've ever seen before, probably. I imagine you won't know any of the actors. It is a recent movie. The movie is called Compliance. Compliance. It is an unpleasant experience. It does involve sexual assault, so be warned. It is, what else was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. It's an unpleasant movie, although it's really interesting. Oh, I remember what it was. It's an unpleasant movie. It does involve sexual assault, so be warned. It is based off a true story. You're going to watch the movie and be like, this is crazy. This would never happen. It happened. It's a completely crazy story. It directly relates to Eric Fromm. So if you're looking to kind of do a little extra to think about Eric, you don't have to watch it. No one is required to watch the movie Compliance, but it ties directly into the Eric Fromm essay, and so you might find it interesting. It is also a very disturbing, interesting movie. It is a movie about a fast food joint, and they receive a phone call from the police, and they say, you have to detain one of your employees because she's committed a crime, and the guy stays on the phone the whole movie, telling them what to do with this girl. And I'm just going to spoil it for you. He's not a cop. He's just claiming to be a cop. On the phone. He never shows up, you never see him, he's on the phone the whole time, and he's a terrible, terrible person. Anyway, it's a very interesting movie, and it really did happen. So Compliance, it's recent. It's from the last like 10 years or something. It's relatively recent. I'll find out more information about it and put it online. But anyway, that's a movie you could watch. But you don't have to watch it, and it does involve sexual assault. And if you like to avoid a movie that involves sexual assault, might be a good idea not to watch it. But it is a pretty interesting, fascinating movie. If we were in person, I'd probably play the movie for you in class, because I think it's a pretty interesting film. But that's up to you. I recommend you watch it, but of course no one has to watch a movie, especially about sexual assault. Okay. Let's get started. Erich Fromm, disobedience as a psychological and moral problem. Okay. Here we go. Paragraph 1. Page 1, paragraph 1. Here we go. And you got to get your copy out, and here we go. I'm going to read the first paragraph. For centuries, kings, priests, feudal lords, industrial bosses, and parents have insisted that obedience is a virtue and that disobedience is a vice. In order to introduce another point of view, let us set against this proposition the following statement. So we're saying the opposite of that. Human history began with an act of disobedience, and it is not unlikely that it will be terminated by an act of obedience. Okay, kind of a tough opening paragraph, but like a lot of these things, once you get the hang of it, the whole thing becomes easier. So he lists off powerful people who like to give orders. Kings, priests, feudal lords, that's like, think of medieval times or something with a guy giving orders to servants. Kings, priests, feudal lords, industrial bosses, meaning like a boss in a factory, but really any kind of boss, and parents. So kings, priests, feudal lords, industrial bosses, and parents have insisted obedience is a virtue. And that disobedience is a vice. Virtue is a good thing, vice is a bad thing. So he says, listen, lots of people who like to give orders, for example, kings, priests, feudal lords, bosses, and parents, right? Lots of people like to give orders. That's a list of people that like to give orders. They all tell you the same thing. It's good to obey, and it's bad to disobey. That is literally all the first sentence of this says. So if you thought it was tough, the first sentence of this is actually very easy. It's just a list of people that like to give orders, and it says, hey, did you ever notice that people who like to give orders tell you that it's good to obey, and it's bad to disobey? Okay. The second sentence, though, is Erich Fromm saying, I don't think that's right. I want to point out something quite opposite to that. He says, in order to introduce another point of view, let us set against this position the following statement. So this is Erich Fromm's opinion. He says, human history began with an act of disobedience, and it is not unlikely that it will be terminated by an act of obedience. So Fromm says that all people that love to give orders say obedience is the most important thing and disobedience is quite bad. Erich Fromm says, hey, I disagree. I think human history began when somebody disobeyed. And he says, and also, I think it's going to end because people obey too much and too easily. So it's actually considering objections. He says lots of people throughout human history said it's good to obey and it's bad to disobey. And Erich Fromm says, hey, you know what? I think the opposite. Let's talk about why. And that's his essay. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Obedience versus disobedience. I assume you know the definitions of these words, but obedience is doing what you're told, and disobedience is rejecting what you're told and doing whatever you want. Refusing to obey orders. Okay, cool. So one of the things he said that was kind of strange in that first paragraph is he says human history began with an act of disobedience. Now, that's a strange thing to say. For starters, where does human history begin and how does he know? Now, Erich Fromm does something slightly strange here that a lot of people don't like. I like it, but other people, it bothers them. He's talking, when he says the beginning of human history, he's not really talking about the beginning of human history. He's talking about mythology about the beginning of human history. And so in the second paragraph, he goes over two famous examples from mythology. One of them is from the book of Genesis in the Bible, and the other one is the story of Prometheus from ancient Greek mythology. In both those stories, characters disobey orders. And both those stories, for the ancient Hebrews and the ancient Greeks, that's kind of the beginning of mankind and civilization. Now, it didn't literally happen, it's a story, but he's right that these are, that for a lot of the Western world, the ancient Hebrews and the ancient Greeks are the beginning of a lot of things that are still around today. And he says, hey, did you ever notice that back in ancient Greece, human history started when somebody disobeyed? And also in the ancient Hebrew Bible, same thing. Anyway, we'll talk about those examples in the next video.